Welcome to Common Off the Shelf, a podcast for the modern Contra and prepper. We discuss items, books, and topics from a common man's perspective, and our opinions are our own. Do not take any of this as hard facts, only as our interpretation and understanding in a flawed world of amazing products, price gouging, and cheap crap. Your results may vary, and your needs may differ depending on where you live and what you know. So don't take this as a blanket endorsement for all people in every situation. Just like camouflage, your abilities and your needs will vary. This is a conversation about hypotheticals and fiction with these items and never is an endorsement of the owner, author, or any actions. Lastly, we are just common men and not experts in all fields. If we get things wrong, great, tell us. If there is something better, let us know. I can't believe I had to say this, but some of you window lickers made this necessary. The music is from Scott Buckley, titled Vengeance. Greetings, everybody. I'm Gorilla Logistician. I'm here with Liquored Rabbit and Mando. And today's little thing is going to be talking about the Xiegu 6100, a small radio that is sold all across the place. Ham radio guys, but if you go to brushbeater.store, you'll see he's selling it too. Today we're going to discuss why and what's interesting about this, also some of the negatives. I'm also going to start out talking about one thing. If you read my article that's on the website americanpartisan.org, you can read a little story, a fictional story I put on there, and we're going to be discussing not only the article but our own impressions. So first of all, I want to talk about something I didn't put in the article, and that's the PRC-77. It's the pack radio from Vietnam, and that thing came out to 13.5 pounds. Now, during Vietnam, there's also another specific device called a Nestor, which was also an encryption system, and that thing weighed in to total that out to about 54 pounds plus your antenna and everything else. And we're not even talking about other stuff that I'd like to talk about, like World War II radios. But if you think about that, that's 54 pounds on a guy before ammo and everything else. And today we now have radios that are common off-the-shelf items. This isn't something from the military. This isn't something that we had to go out and procure for $10,000 and buy 100,000 of them from Raytheon to get them in our hands. This is something you can spend $600-700 and get right now. I am going to be discussing this based on some of my experiences with the 6200. I have an IC705. Mando, you said you have one, correct?
I have a 6100 and G90 that I've been learning.
Okay. And Liquored Rabbit, I know you don't have this one.
No, not yet.
But I know you have some experiences with the KX3, which is probably the civilian side's one of the more expensive radios of this size.
Yeah, something more like that. That's the mostly pack radio I'm using right now, at least for the HF stuff.
So let's Mando, I know you built a box to put this thing in the first place, and we kind of discussed that a little bit before the show. This thing is small. This is smaller than the old large brick phones we used to have, the old cell phones. And what do you think about the size compared to the G90 and the weight?
Well, I'm holding them both, and I'd say the weight is about a little less than half, and the size is about half if you do it volume-wise. And so that's the nice thing, which is why I picked one up, because this is better for traveling.
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason why I got one too. I have an IC705. It's about a third larger than this 6100. And I think this is probably a better radio, and I'm also kind of a guy, I'm obviously a radio nerd. Obvious by the article that I wrote and the stuff my buddies have too. I've got a couple radios. And this was one of those backup things. I was like, let me check this out. Let me go buy one. The G90 actually is going to one of my other friends as his primary radio because he doesn't have one, and he helped me out. So we're doing a little horse trading. Mando has the G90, and I talked to you about doing this a while ago and getting that radio. I think up at the G Camp, if that is correct, right?
Yeah, so I picked mine up from Brush Feeder. I had my eyes on it for a while actually since I met him, and finally pulled the trigger, so to speak. And the idea that I've had with it is the G90 is going to be my base radio that stays at home because just because it's a little bit bigger. It's not unwieldy by any means, but then the 6100 can go in this case that I got at Harbor Freight for $30, right? So it fits in the case. Everything should be able to go in there. Instructions will go in there, and I can throw that in the trunk of the car or the truck or whatever I'm driving because I drive all over the place. And then I've got a mobile radio and I've got a base station. So if something happens, grid goes down, I can contact home. I can contact anybody in the area. So that was kind of my idea behind having both and having the smaller one as the travel one. Because, worst case scenario, I don't want to carry this case. I jam it in my backpack and it's got an internal battery, so still have some life, which I know you're going to go over.
Yeah, I like the internal battery, and Rabbit can kind of talk about the internal batteries, the woes of that, because he's got a KX3, and the KX3 has the option to have batteries internally or run on an external power source. And I think Rabbit and I both run our radios on an external battery pack.
Yeah.
Still, I don't know if you still
Yeah,
do.
pretty much for the most part, that's exclusively how I've run it. I just pretty much run it. I haven't had the best reliability with it, I guess. It just doesn't seem like it does work. But I just feel a lot more confident knowing that, it's not going to cut out in the middle of a transmission, or I'm not going to mess something up, or it's not going to be transmitting like I'd like it to. Plus, I found a small pack that it all fits in real nicely. So there's kind of not really an excuse for me to use that, at least right now.
Yeah, and I think the internal batteries are nice. The only thing I don't like about the KX3 is it's kind of replaceable, rechargeable batteries, and if one of the things breaks inside, you're gonna have issues with that. And that's probably my only downside on the 6100 for the battery is the internal battery is not maintainable. You're going to have to take this thing apart with screws and probably take it to somebody who knows something about wiring and technology. And if you're looking at this versus the 6200 has the same setup as the IC705, which you pull the battery pack off, you put a new one in. And when I was out in Utah running radios, I had my 705. I forgot my battery pack because I'd taken it out to charge it. And I went out there with a charged radio. I thought, and I didn't even have that charged. I had a handheld radio that had the same battery, and I plugged it in. And I got my contacts because I do ham radio stuff, not just super cool ninja combat stuff that's taught by Brush Beater. It's, I do it for a hobby too, and it keeps me sharp. But you forget all that stuff. So I kind of like that it has the internal battery for that. But I agree. I think an external battery is a better way to go. Even if you mess up, you still have a charge on the back. And that's one of the downsides to the G90 personally is you have to run that with an external power.
Yeah, and I mean that's never
So,
been a huge issue. I mean, pretty much what I'm looking at right now. I mean, at least from what I'm using right now. So KX3 without anything is 18 ounces. Um, and the 6100 is a little bit heavier. It sits about like 22, and then the 62 is like 23 ounces. At least that's what it's telling me here. So I mean, it's comparable. I mean, these things are still, like you said, they're really small. Which is really why I've been looking at one. I haven't really made the decision between the 61 and the 62, whether or not the price gap is really worth it yet. But I don't know. I've never used a field radio without external battery. I even was running that big honkin' 897 that I run, the Yaesu that I really like. I actually ran it off the same battery. Granted, I only get 20 watts instead of the 100, but I don't know. It just seems kind of like a way of life. So, especially since I mean, the battery's similar. I think we got the similar ones where they're the shoot, it kind of fits in the palm of my hand. It's really not all that big. I think it's only, it's that little
Yeah,
cube
I
battery. I
think you
can't
got the
remember which
smaller
one it was, but it's one of those custom ones.
I think you got Yeah, I think you got a Bio NO. I've got the bigger Bio NO, but honestly, Amazon right now has all these batteries. And the nice thing I like about the Xiegu series of radios, they take a different power level. They've got a wider spectrum that they take and will accept that power compared to some of the other more modern radios like the IC705. I even think the KX3 also has a little bit of a narrow path. From what I'm reading right now in the article, it says 9 volts to 15 volts DC as an operating voltage, which is pretty massive spectrum. Uh,
So what's a typical car battery? Is it usually get 12 off of that, right?
Yeah,
yeah, you get 12, 12 volts, give or take.
especially if you're using like a
And
deep
what
cell.
we're looking
I
at is,
imagine that's more what you're going to be using
yeah,
for an application like this.
Well, the idea is like my thought process, because I know basically nothing about this, has been like I want to be able to just plug it into my car, and I drive two different vehicles. Sometimes I have three different vehicles that I'm in week to week, right? So I want to be able to take my radio and have the wires set up so I can just plug it into the wall or plug it into a car outlet or I don't know if USB does enough. Some of them do. And that's the nice thing I liked about this because of the range, the mobility, or the range as far as voltage, adaptability or compatibility, and then the mobility for size. And honestly, on both of them, they're excellent choices. So when you get into the 6100 and you're telling me that it's even better, and then the size is preferable. So I think the only thing that I'm going to have a problem set up with is if I'm going to have multiple mounting brackets. I'm going to figure that out somehow.
that might be a problem. But it shouldn't be too hard for you on that side. There's so much stuff with the G90, and this is another reason why I like Xiegu, especially for this COTS concept of, hey, I've got one, you got one, and we may not have the same thing, but Xiegu is everybody makes products for it. You can get a dog bone handheld radio, microphone for your G90. I think you can get it for the 6100 at this point too. And there's just notoriously cheap radio that's reliable. Now I will say, I think Rabbit's got probably the best radio out of all of us when it comes to the filters and everything else. But what is the actual goal of these radios? Yes, I've talked to Japan with my radio. It's QRP radios. These are all low powered radios, minus the 8970 talked about. And the 6100 is a 5 or 10 watt radio, depending if you have outside power or you're just running on the battery. And this also comes to the 6200, which is I think 8 watts with external and 5 watts in the battery. So that's something to think about. And if I'm correct, the G90 is 20 watts external. Well, 20, I think 20 watts is the max on that thing. I don't think they have they don't have an internal battery, but that's a little more power. But we're still talking about QRP radios. We're not talking about something you put on your
So
desk and
before
talk.
we get too far here, let's remind people, since this is the first episode, what's COTS? When you're talking about power, what kind of ranges can you expect? And then what's QRP? Just make sure everybody understands we're on the same page because there's going to be new people coming to this too.
And there's people who don't play with radios, and it ends up being the worst thing about ham radio operators is they have all these acronyms just like the military, and nobody explains it because we just all think everybody knows it already. QRP is just low powered radios. And there's a misnomer to radios, especially when it comes to ham radios and high frequency. This is not your handheld, your line of sight talking things like your AR-152. These are radios are designed to bounce off the ionosphere and come back down. And I just got done with a class from a historian a couple months ago, and he taught us all about these radios. Now I've been doing this for a while, but he uses NVIS, which is near vertical incident skywave, which is another acronym you don't need to know. But essentially, think about shooting all your radio waves straight up and coming down in about a 600-mile cone. This prevents you from being tracked down very easily. And this doesn't matter if it's Joe Schmuck with a Kraken, me with a Yagi antenna that I was taught to make in all of us saw in the RTO classes, it is almost impossible to find you if you do a couple standard things. Don't talk long, don't or keep your transmission really short. Use digital if you can, and that makes it real easy. So people think power equates quality of transmission, which there is an effect to that. But a lot more of that comes from knowing how to make a good antenna. And I've seen that with the IC705, etc. And honestly,
That's
Historian
your
really likes
ICOM,
the
right?
link dipole. I do too.
That's the
Yeah,
ICOM.
my ICOM IC705. Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than this one is. So,
Yeah.
but so if you are looking at these radios and you're like 5 or 10 watts, I will say it's a little more difficult. If you don't know what you're doing, these radios are a little harder to operate and get good, clear contacts. And I will say there's a association called Parks in the Air. Get your ham license, and you can get on there and you can say, hey, contact me on this frequency. And it makes it a lot easier for you to practice and train and figure out how to use your
Yeah,
radio.
that's pretty helpful.
That's where the G90 I think is a better
Yeah,
radio.
because
Yeah.
you locate yourself, like you pretty much go out. Um, you can pretty much use these
Go to a
radios
park.
really are ideal for that because like we were talking about earlier about the batteries
Yep.
and stuff. And I did want to correct something too, and I
Yep.
messed up earlier. So
Go ahead.
I was talking about the weights. So I kind of just did some rough math,
Mm-hmm.
how good I am at that. So between the three that at least we're currently talking about, your the 6200 is going to be, or excuse me, the KX3 is going to be 1.1 pound for let's use
Mm-hmm.
hour units, and
Mm-hmm.
6100 is going to be 1.8 pounds, with the 6200 just being a tenth higher at the 1.9 pounds. So it's a little bit easier to understand. Like, I mean, these things don't really weigh anything, so you pretty much you can go to the park, set up all your stuff, and then pretty much say, hey, this is where I am. You sign into their little website, and they come find you. Or guys that are sitting at their house and stuff will come and hunt and find you and look for you as a contact, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like doing a contest weekend without doing a contest. It's a whole nother can of worms. But it literally, I can say I'm going to this park at this time. Listen for me on this frequency. If I have no cell phone service, I can preset that up. If I do have cell phone service, which I recommend when you first start out, go where there's cell phone service, set it up. It's a fun little thing to do. It's real easy, and I usually do that to teach new guys how to just run their radios. So
And so the
there's that.
G90 is about a kilo, which is 2.2 pounds. And I did want to, since you reminded me, Rabbit, thank you to correct myself. This G90 was a gift. So I didn't actually purchase
Oh,
this, and I
nice.
have been remiss in getting it going at its capacity and getting my ham license, but
Dude, I'm
life
with you there. I
sometimes.
can understand.
So that will be remedied post haste. So
Well, hey,
yes,
that's kind of why I'm
that's
bothering you guys about these because those were the two that I'm kind of looking at.
Yeah.
Because talking about capabilities and stuff in comparison,
if you
obviously with
want to
me running
talk,
this KX3, that thing is as logistic, as he said, this thing it's really awesome. I'm very nerdy. I like to read very boring books that are pretty much just technological manuals, so it works really well for me. But in a pinch, it is kind of hard to get it going, especially if you haven't used it in a while. Where you, like I said, I use that other radio a little bit more because it's a little bit more user friendly. Plus, the KX3 doesn't have a screen unless you go and you spend the extra money for a couple extra parts. It doesn't have any waterfall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Pan
doesn't have a
adapter.
waterfall. Um, the like I said, no screen, none of those other things. It's very rudimentary, but with very high quality parts. And it's kind of ready to go out of the box. Is not. I wouldn't say that. You definitely need to practice with this thing, and I still am not. I know, I can go on Facebook and stuff, and these guys are still smoking me on the knowledge of it. And I don't feel like I don't use it all the time, but I'm also not like dead set into this thing all the time, which is the reason why I'm interested in looking at one of these and bothering you guys to see what you guys think and see between the G90, the 61, and the 6200 whether or not those would be worthwhile to maybe transition to.
Yeah, one of the nice things I like is the screen. I know talking about the G90, you have a 3-inch screen on that one, and you still have a waterfall on that one, correct?
I'm sorry,
Uh,
the G90. I'm
Yeah, you still have
Yeah, I
that little
think so. I'm
waterfall
not
there.
sure. I haven't turned it on for a while.
Yeah.
I could.
Okay. We
Yeah.
need to get you going. By the way, if anybody's listening,
Yep.
hamstudy.org is a great website, great resource for you to go. And I tell everybody this: you are not going to learn these devices without actually getting your license and practicing. Most of the test questions are just safety questions, rules, and all that other stuff. Memorize it, pass the test, and get it done. Do the tech and the general. I think I know I have the tech in general. I'm actually working on my amateur extra, which I've been trying to work on for a while. Rabbit, I think you have your tech in general as well, and Mando's the only one who here currently doesn't. But I've shown Mando at the school a couple times, and I've shown other people that too. One thing I did want to bring up between the 6100 and 6200, besides the body, the 6100 is aluminum, the 6200 is a polymer body, um, which really doesn't matter for anything. But I think that's where a lot of people get worried about. The bodies really don't matter. It's got really good hard plastic. The other thing is the 6200 has a little bit more reception capabilities than the 6100, and we're going to go into that a little bit more. But right now, Rabbit has the KX3, and that thing does 2 meters. I think it does 7
yeah, 70,
centimeters, if I remember
pretty
correctly, in
much
all the
HF,
HF bands.
VHF, and UHF. Depending on what antenna
It's
you,
missing
yeah,
some of the stuff, but
because I do know you do. I haven't done the oh, I cannot remember what that thing is called. The Mars mod on it yet. I mean to talk
I
to
did.
them.
yeah.
I did
Uh,
do that on my G90 at G Camp with anti-pattern. So that's done.
Okay. Yeah, and
Yep.
that's a real easy fix. That's the one
Simple.
thing I liked about the G90, and this is a great stepping point off because the G90 has a little chip. It's got an arrow pointing at it, and you literally can solder it off or break it off with a pair of
Did it
pliers,
with
and
you're
the
I've
talking
tip
done
about
of
that.
my
on it, the
knife.
actual chip
I'm gonna
itself.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the board. You just take the back off and you just break that
I
thing
just
off, and you're good to go. Now,
pried it. I pried it with the tip of my knife and
yeah,
anti-pattern. So just leave the one side
pop it off.
attached, so that way if you ever got to put it back, I was like, oh, okay, smart. He's smarter than me.
I would
So
I would
yeah.
have just torn it off, but
Oh, that's pretty easy.
so we're gonna go on to updating the radio, and I'm not gonna go through how to update the radio. It's on the article, but I want to talk about this real quick because Xiegu is one of the few places that I will tell you to update your radio, but give them a month or so after they put out a new patch before you update your radio. And I brought this up. Xiegu bricks radios. For whatever reason, they come out with new software. I don't know if it's because they're Chinese guys over there. They will set the software up. You'll install new software and it will brick the radio. About 2 weeks later, they'll come out with a new update and everything's fine. But just give other people a chance. You get a radio that works when it comes in. I have updated my radio. That said, I'm going to go on to the Mars mod. Now, I'm going to tell everybody here, the guys who are listening to this, you're not sad hams. Mars mod your damn radio. You want to wideband this thing, you want to be able to receive everything. And I've done that with the IC705. That was a hellacious monster. I actually had somebody else do it because you have to take the whole radio apart and everything else. I was like, I'm not that skilled with this. The 6100, and I'm assuming is going to be, and the 6200 are done the same way. You go on here, you log into the little system, and these radios will connect to Wi-Fi and allow you to actually root into the radio because it's a Linux kernel. And there's a little text file. You go in there, and it says, I think some kind of mod or something like that. I'll have to look in a second. But anyways, you just go from disabled to enabled. and it opens up everything on the HF band that this radio can listen to. Now, I don't know how open the 6200 is versus what it can do. The 6200 does all the 50 megahertz HF bands. It also can receive wide FM radio bands and the air bands, which is really nice because if you're around radio aircraft and you're trying to listen for them, you can actually hear them. The downside is I don't know if you can transmit to them or not, but at least for the SIG inside of it, it's nice to have. So you do lose a little bit of that wattage power, which isn't a big deal most of the time, but you get a lot more bandwidth. And that's the same thing with the KX3. You have those options there that you wouldn't have on the 6100 out of the box. But I don't think that's such a critical thing. If you need to save a couple $100, save a couple $100 to get the 6100. But I do know you can do the modification to do that. The other thing that I kind of want to point out is the 6100 has been around for a couple of years, just like the G90, and people have modified it. People have done software modifications to this, and they know how to get everything set up. And one of the big problems with ham operators, something new comes out, and all the software we use to do um, data transmissions, things like that, generally are done by private citizens. They're open source, they're free. FL is one that I talk about in here, and I've showed Rabbit FL We've actually used it up in the mountains a couple times. And you have to connect a computer to your radio and do that to do that. But initially, none of that software says, "Hey, here's this radio, here's the settings for the 6100." Nice thing is with Xiegu, because of how the software is set up, their old X106 radio was the same software formatting as the 6100. Fast forward a couple years, now the 6100's on the FL software. That's all in the article. You can take a look at that. And I think it's cool that it's that simple, unlike the KX3, which you have to go in and manually reset a whole bunch of software and everything else to do that, and that's a pain in the butt. And Rabbit can attest to that one.
Yeah, that's why I haven't gotten that Mars mod done, because I think I gotta still. Yeah, I think I gotta email them, and then I think they send it to me, and then I upload it into via like USB stick or whatever. But that was another reason why I'm kind of attracted to this idea, just because it is. I'm not the biggest fan, obviously it's a Chinese radio, but unfortunately, I mean, all these radios are Asian in nature. I mean, I don't know of any radio that's actually coming out
I
of the
think
United States. Um,
your KX3 is
See, I
is the
didn't think
only one that I know is
yeah, but I
built
thought
in
the
the U.S.
chipsets and stuff come from overseas. I mean, most of the guts I thought came from the overseas. Um, but I mean, I can be wrong on that. I was pretty.
I'm sure you're right to an extent on that one too. I don't know how many chips we make in the U.S. at this point either. I do know ICOM, which is a Japanese radio company. A lot of their stuff is built partially in China and then shipped over to Japan, so you get a better quality control out of there, which is
Well, I mean, you're
nice.
paying for it too. I
But
mean,
I yeah,
those
yeah,
things are not.
I'm $1,400
Yeah, I mean, these are
plus.
not. I would love one too. The price point is a little, yeah, but I mean, for the most part, I mean, you're talking. Most of the sensitivities are pretty good. I mean, not, I mean, again, I guess what you're really looking for is just, clear transmission. Like you said, I mean, you've talked to other
That kick,
country. I mean, yeah, I've sat there, we've talked to other countries and stuff like that. But I mean, ultimately, you need two people to make any of this work, at least two people. And you just need to be able
yeah.
to make out what they're saying. I mean, you're not trying to, you're not looking for Bose surround sound, awesome audio. You're looking for, you know, just understanding a transmission and whether or not it's, I'm using it for emergency preparedness. Where I'm at, I get a lot of, winter storms and stuff like that, and this is nice to
Yeah.
have, especially if I need to keep touch with you guys, um, or anybody else, and say, hey, this is what's going on. Infrastructure
Well,
here is not really the greatest, so it goes down even now. I mean, I don't even have anything going down. Half my neighborhood is out of power.
Well, and North
Um,
Carolina taught us a lesson too, and we get hard winters up here where I'm at. But
yeah.
you brought up something that is a good point to touch on here. That you said price, and that was something that I pulled up Brush Beater store, and the G90 is $449, the 6100 $600, and the 6200 is $790. So depending on where you land in that spectrum, you know, I would probably that's what I try to do in my day job is advise customers based on their situation, and sometimes price comes up like, hey, do you want this one that's 350, 450, or you want the one that's 800? What are you looking for? And that's a good, and browsing his store, I mean, he's got a bunch of options. You can pretty much get into this. He's got a $2,000 radio on his website, right? So you can get into this at any price point wherever you land in that spectrum, and they're all going to work and do what we
Oh
want
What
them
yeah.
to do.
what's the two
He's got
what's the
the TBR
$2,000 radio?
119
Oh, that's the
tactical.
one with the
It
kit and
Oh,
stuff. And
yeah,
yeah,
it
that's the
looks like
yeah.
backpack radio.
what's the one we had when I had in the army? The
Oh, the prick.
Oh,
oh the
119.
Singars,
I
the
can't remember.
Singars. It looks
Oh,
like a Singars radio with the frequency hops and all that stuff. That's what it looks like. I don't know what it is. I don't know what
Yeah.
this is at all. So
The TBR 119 is one of those radios that I could hand to anyone, and I can tell you to go out and use it, and I'll preset everything up as an RTO or something like that, and I can tell you to go out and use this. And if you're not a complete idiot, it's very simple, and it's damn near bomb proof. Like they are built to last. The 6100s and the 6200s are a little more fragile. And when I was when I wrote this article for this, I wrote that article specifically with the idea in mind of a wireless telegraph operator from World War II, the SOE guys. These are guys who are out sneaking around, getting intelligence, and transmitting it to another source. Most of this was Germany or France to Britain. And these guys were hunted a lot, and they didn't last long. And there's a couple books out there. There's oh man, London Calling the North Pole, which is from the German side of it, and I'll have to look up the other book. But the wireless telegraph operator was one of two key components. He was the guy who transmitted with the radio, but there was another guy who did the encryption. Both of them could do it, but there's another guy who did all the coding. And this is something I kind of want to go into on this radio because the radio itself has a cool feature. Now, we talked about digital. Digital means fast transmission. It also means that if my radio is not peak performance and I'm getting kind of bad static in the atmosphere and I can't hear too well, the computer can dig out signals that you couldn't hear when I keyed up a mic and talked to you like you're listening to me now. And that's something that's really important. Now there are certain pieces of software out there, and that's where FL Digi, which I've got in the article on how to do this. Turn on FL Rig, put it on a laptop, go buy yourself a little cheap laptop, and you can set this up. But it's got BPSK, it's got RTTY, and it also does CW, which is very,
Xiegu Morse
very,
code.
very good.
so what
Yep,
are
it is
those
Morse
though? Before
code.
we get because I'm not familiar, so somebody else might not be also.
Okay, so for what it is, it's a digital mode where the radio makes a whole bunch of digital racket and then somebody can read on the other side. Now, the nice thing about the 6100, the G90 can decode Morse code, which is called CW, but it doesn't do RTTY, it doesn't do BPSK. And these are just different modes. Think of it as like Linux versus Apple versus Windows. They all do the same thing, but they kind of got different software to do it.
Or
That's
different
for a layman's term,
languages,
that's probably the
maybe.
best answer. Yeah, it's different languages, but yeah, different languages is probably a better answer to that. Your radio, the 6100, can decode this. So if you scroll over and you find a digital thing and you set your radio to listen to digital, you can actually say, "Hey, decode this for me," and it will write it out on the screen. The other thing you can do is you can pre-program. You could hand this radio to a guy who does a one-time pad, and he can type in. It's tedious as hell, but he can type in a code, and I can send this radio out with anyone. tell them to put up an antenna a certain way, and hit the transmit button at a certain time, and that message will transmit out. Now, to receive the message, you're going to have somebody to write it down. But other than that, he can go out and do that. And that takes a guy away from a radio that could be killed, that may have critical information, who could be captured. And it also means that OTP, if I have an OTP right now and I say, hey, Rabbit, take this radio out, and he gets stopped along the way or he gets caught in transmission because he doesn't do something right, Rabbit doesn't know what that message is. The people who catch him don't know what that message is, and it can't be broken. They have to come get the guy who encoded it, and that's part of the reason why they also did this for the World War
That's a
II as
one-time pad, which to shout out Brush Feeder, you can get it from him as well. Another those from him too. So
yeah,
Yeah, I find them a lot. I find
you
a lot
also
of my
get
stuff on
a.
the site.
yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
talk about.
You can also do
I mean,
a
that's
10-sided dice. A 10-sided die rolling
yeah.
it will do it too, but it's a pain
I
in the
mean,
ass.
talk about common off the shelf. I mean, you can get it all from him
Yep.
and other sources as well. But obviously, he's the main man. So,
Oh yeah,
but
you know,
but yeah,
you meet him and
that
you talk to him. I'd rather give my money to somebody I've seen before and
yep,
I trust.
exactly. And the TBR 119 actually has a picture with the truck parked on top of it. So I would say that falls outside of the purview of this particular podcast and conversation, but still cool. So,
Yeah, it's a cool radio. It is
yep.
so heavy. It is something that a guy goes out there and you're carrying this thing, and it's very water resistant. The 6100 isn't water resistant. You're going to have to put it under a tarp. You're going to have to keep it protected in a box like
Yep.
you made for it.
$30 at Harbor Freight.
That's something you're going to have to
Can't
do.
beat it. So I'm gonna get
Yep.
another one for the G90, just a different color.
Yeah, a couple plastic
Yep.
bags though will keep this thing sealed up. Anybody who's run radios like the Falcon in the military, a lot of guys would throw a plastic bag and take electrical tape and tape the connectors and seal that radio up, and you can still click on things. So that's an option. One thing I will say about the software on the radio itself, it has generic passwords. Please, for the love of God, after you've done all your updating and everything else, set your password to something besides root and 123. That's the password, but change it for the love of God. Once you get done with that, you can shut the Wi-Fi off, and it won't matter either. But that's one of those things. Last thing I want to say about software, there's a guy, Romeo 1 Charlie Bravo Uniform. He has made his own firmware for the radio, and you can plug it in, and it changes how the radio looks and feels and acts, and probably does a little bit of software
That's
bonuses
an entire
as well.
changeover.
I haven't played with
Like
it.
that's an entire
It is.
user
It is
interface. All that stuff gets changed.
all of it's changed and it's clear. I think he did a really good job with it, and it gives you all the features that you already have, but it's done better. And this is something I want to point out with the Xiegu that you can't do with an IC705 and all this other stuff. Somebody out there can make encrypted software or whatever else, and theoretically can put it on here. Legally, you can't right now, but when shit hits the fan, all that goes out the door. This is more of a possibility. And with people like Annie Pattern out there who are software nerds and stuff like that, that's more feasible than ever before, which we couldn't do back in the day. Side note, 6200 has more RAM, I believe, and a little more space on its hard drive than the 6100 does as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it helps out when you're trying to do stuff like that. But like you said, yeah, I mean, none of these radios in the past have had that capability ever. I mean, that wasn't even something that was even talked about.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that really, you were talking about the ham community. That is a huge, huge thing. I know I've seen it. I know you see. I think all of us have seen it at least once. Just the, you know, even though kind of didn't grow up exactly working ham radio, got into the hobby just like you, years back. Actually, I think it was your fault in the meantime that I did. But I mean, it's crazy to think that, like at the two radios I mentioned before, the KX3 and this 897, which is a base station. Literally all that's on that little screen is the frequency and a just your receiving power. Like that's it. Like that's all that's it. I mean, it's
Yep.
literally about the size of your thumb. And now SDRs are the software defined radios, which shoot, you can go find websites that are just software defined radios. And you just listen to whatever you want and just
Yep.
scroll through a band. I think it's wild that now you have this capability. You can shoot even these older radios. Is it the pan adapter that you were mentioning? I think that's what you can pretty much plug into, and they have different adapters for these older. Pretty much any radio has one, and you can get some.
That's
That's
the
the okay.
DigiReg.
Digi.
That's the DigiReg. And that's something about the downside with the G90. I love the G90. I called it the Hilux of radios in my other article, and that's part of the reason why I told Mando to get one, and I even think I told you Rabbit to get one at one time until the 6100 came out. And it's the only downside is you have to plug in a device to make that radio talk to a computer in between. They're not expensive. They're $50. It's not a big deal. You buy two cables, you plug it in, and now the G90 will run digital just like the 6100. Nice thing about the 6100, you don't need that. You literally plug a USB-C cable in there, boom, plug it to the computer. The one thing caveat I'll say is make sure that it's a good quality cable because you'll get noise, and that's all thing you'll have to deal with ham radio stuff, and it's not in the scope of this conversation. But there's a couple things if you have issues, start talking to the ham guys. Most ham guys, as long as you don't say I'm transmitting out of my band, I don't have a ham license. They'll teach you if you don't have a ham license. They'll help you out to get one. But don't be an idiot and be like, yeah, I'm prepping for doomsday. Some of those guys though, at at those ham clubs are preppers. They're literally preppers. They're looking for disaster prepper. Some of them think the apocalypse is going to come. China's coming. I've heard the UN conversation
Yeah,
multiple times, but
in my area they
realistically,
complain because guys come in, they want to get into the hobby, and then they just learn what they want, and then they leave. Like nobody sticks because we got a pretty big club
yeah.
in my area too. Well, one other thing too about these two radios, since I've got them both, right? The G90, the faceplate comes off, and so you can mount it
Mm-hmm.
wherever. But the 6100 is so much smaller. You can put it on the dashboard. You can put it in on your center console. You can put it on the seat next to you and use it as that parks on the air that you were talking about. So pretty cool features on
Yeah.
both of them. Um, I think the 6100's just a little easier to deal with because it's like I don't know. I don't even know what to tell you. The size of it's small. I can hold it in one hand like a large glass of beer. I mean,
It
that's really all it is.
it's the size of my cell phone, an average cell phone, but it's about half as deep as the cell phone. If that's a good good analogy. Think of it, you got a cell phone sized device, but it's probably stacked 4 or 5 cell phones deep. And that's about the size of the
Yeah,
radio.
yeah. It's just thicker. With two.
And
Good.
I mean, it'll fit in a pocket. It'll fit in you could fit it in a cargo pocket in BDU pants, but don't do that because you'll smash the crap out of it. One other thing I will say is, where is that thing? There it is. Vigilante Engineering, who makes a great box to protect your Tiny SA Ultra, is working on building a protective case for this radio, the 6100 specifically. He bought one, and if you know about his case for the Tiny SA Ultra, you're going to have a slide that turns that screen to a red hue. It's a red piece of plastic to drop that light at night so you don't make as much light pollution as you normally would with the screen. And the screen's pretty good about that. You can actually go into display settings and turn down the screen brightness and a bunch of other stuff. But just for you guys who might be doing field work or somewhere kind of less permissible, that's
Yeah,
something to
I've
look
liked
at.
his cases too.
One other,
That's what I picked one up
oh,
last time I was down there, and um,
his cases, his AR-152 protectors, they're super easy to do. It's all 3D printed stuff, so you could theoretically do it yourself, but it's
it's
it's a it's
set
a
up very
it's a
nicely.
good price. Yeah, and he's thought about
And he
everything.
said that's for the
Mine
60. He's
got
got one for
chucked
the
out of the car.
6100.
Yeah, I've seen some prototype photos. He's still working on it because he just got the 6100, and I kind of browbeat him into that. We also talked about getting a link dipole antenna kit. That may be something he doesn't sell because Scout has made this point multiple times. There are a lot of dumb people who buy stuff, and dumb people ask a lot of dumb questions and cry about stuff that they don't understand. I'm sure a lot of you guys listening know how
Yeah,
that feels and
pretty
have
sure.
dealt with that. So he may just not do it.
I hope he
So,
does. That'd be
one
nice.
thing I
Yeah,
can,
that would be really nice
me
because I
too.
mean, that'd be
You take Matt's RTO course, you learn how to make antennas. The link dipole is nothing different. It's not that hard. All of a sudden, you have a link dipole. You can do the NVIS that I was talking about. You can do normal stuff, and you can build one anytime you want. It's great. I will say one other thing about this radio. The one detractor that I think I mentioned in this article, it is a little bit rough when you're in a populated area. This is something that you don't see as much with the KX3, the IC705, and some stuff with better filters. Historian's a big fan of the TX500, and I know Rabbit had looked at that radio as well because it's basically a waterproof radio, super bomb proof, made out of aluminum, and it was made in Russia. They have since changed how they're getting it imported, so that's not an issue, and we're seeing them come in again. But they're another $1,400 radio. Anyways, the 6100 in cities, because of LED lights and everything else, there's a lot of noise. I'm sitting here with this radio on my desk, and I have a uh, connector for it that's connected into a dummy load, and I'm still getting some noise from all the crap in this city
well, it
on
definitely
the
doesn't get
spectrum.
any
Um,
better between. I mean, obviously
no,
that's a whole other conversation. Noise from LEDs will do it and other
the
stuff.
705
Yeah,
gets it too. Yeah,
where I'm at is not
the
good.
705 gets it too.
Even
Yeah.
trying to, you know, I pretty much have to do parks on the air to really hear anything because there's just that much noise sometimes.
Yeah, now if you got a 100-watt radio and you've got a good antenna and you've got a really good stuff, you can punch out through that noise and you can get back in. These radios are more for, and that's kind of the reason why the G90 is kind of an interesting little animal. That 20 watts is a big difference, not a huge difference. It's not critical difference. And if you had to buy one radio, I'd probably tell you to get the 6100 right now if you knew anything about radios. But that G90, you got a lot of noise. It's gonna be something that you might want to look at. Now, if we have a grid down situation, all that's out of the window because you don't have to worry about all the noise from everybody else's LED lights and stupid electronics from China that's trashed out. And it does not take very far. You can get to a park in a major city, and there's enough noise drop there that you can run the radio just fine. I was in basically Miami, Florida, on a big hill of trash that had turned into a park, and I was talking to Caribbean islands, no issue, crystal clear. So with the 6100.
Now, is there looking through some of that stuff? The only thing that I'm kind of, and maybe it's just worded weird. So the thing that I'm looking at here is between the 61 and the 6200 under the technical platform saying 6100 does a zero intermediate frequency with the 6200 doing RF direct acquisition. Am I?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too familiar with that specifically. Um, Unless it's just verbiage I don't understand. I'm not too sure if you've seen that too.
I I don't know that. I don't understand that either. It's one of the questions that I tried to figure out before I wrote that article. I still don't know what the difference is. Realistically, for a guy who's just running a radio and doesn't know much, I don't think there's a big difference. There may be some difference down the road, or maybe it's a little bit clearer, or maybe it cancels out some of that stuff. Um, One of the things on the 6100, the G90, the 6200, it does have the ability to use your filters to get some of the noise out of any frequency you're connected to. Um, So there's that option for that. I just don't think it's as good as a KX3 and IC705 from my experience. It's not bad. It works fine. It's in your budget. It's currently about $200 more than a Palmetto State Armory, Black Friday sale rifle. So you're not spending a crap ton on a radio that you don't need. And even if you get this, and this is another thing that I'll caveat, radios like this, HF radios, are something you need to practice with. Even your little handheld, you should practice with. You need to know how to run the thing. If you don't know how to run it, it would be like handing a Glock to somebody and saying, "Hey, clear this Glock for me." And it's got a magazine in it, and they drop the magazine after they've flagged you 10 times, and they go, "It's cleared," and they're still around in the chamber. You have to practice and learn these things. So don't think
Well,
this is
that's
a
kind of the excuse,
pick
and
it
that's
up,
what you were
I'm gonna
talking
put it
about
on a shelf
earlier
and
about
play it.
getting. I mean, I understand the concerns some people have with getting your license and stuff, and personal security and stuff like that, and giving
Yeah.
your license out as a because it does have your personal information attached to it, but it does, at least
Yep.
now, for as things are, you can pop up, and most of the time people don't care. I mean, I don't know anybody who really does, as long as you're not being too much of a menace on the net.
Yeah, if you're not messing with people, some ham fud might yell at you. But here's the kicker for you guys who are like, I don't want to get a license because of XYZ feds. Cool, gotcha. The FCC states that you have to be able to receive mail. You can receive that mail from a family member's house, from a PO box, or a friend's house. It does not matter. It just has to go to a mailbox, and it has to be mailable to you. And realistically, so historian, if you find out about him, he's a real smart guy. His information is not connected to his home address. You'll never figure out where he is if you had his call sign, unless you're super super
Yeah,
smart.
most people
And
do
I
it that
promise
way.
you, most of us won't
Yeah,
figure it out.
mostly PO
Yeah, yeah.
boxes at this point, and it's not critical. I don't want to. I mean,
they're not going to come to your house and grab your ham radio over. Let's get rid of all the rifles. We see this. No, nobody has done a HF radio ban since World War II, and this is part of the reason. This is something I learned in class too. The reason why ham radio operators are such nitpicky bastards when it comes to like doing the right thing and following the rules is because during World War II, amateur radio was killed. And I know, Rabbit, you've been up to I think ARRL's main place, and they've got some really cool old timey
yeah,
radios
that's
there
really
and
like
everything
their
else like that.
first, not the first base station, but yeah, that's their corporate headquarters, or whatever you
Yeah,
want to call it. Really awesome, actually. It's like a small museum, and you can go in there. And at the time, I think they had, I think it was another hurricane that had come through, and they were doing, or no, that was the one that was in Puerto Rico, the disaster in Puerto Rico. They
yeah,
were talking to them from, which that um, ARRL is the um, pretty much the lead of amateur radio, um, and they are out of Connecticut. So I went up there on a personal trip and happened to stop by, and there's some really cool stuff. But what you were telling me about the World War II stuff and it being banned for security
yep,
reasons, and I mean, obviously, this is also the same time that during the British raids and people aren't even using regular light bulbs. They're selling red light
yeah,
bulbs because of bombings, and or obviously the Germans um, during the Blitz and stuff, and as well as even our coastlines. A lot of people don't realize, like, during the coast, they didn't want any of your lights on. There was a ton of outcry of saying, hey, that was against freedoms. That you couldn't. But I mean, we can go back and forth on the moral and ethical and all that stuff,
yeah. Who's right? Who's
but it's
wrong with
still a
that? Yeah,
wild concept to say that, yeah, it wasn't that long ago, during the 40s. I think it was like what were you? I think it was like 37. Take that with a grain of salt, but I think it was like 37 to 38, and they said, "Hey, no, you can't do this anymore. You can't do the amateur radio anymore." And it never came back until the Navy made a little bit of a stink about it and said, "Hey, we want to do this again," while the rest of the DoD said, "We didn't know. We don't want civilians to have this capability anymore," which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, the Army didn't. Army
Yeah, the
wanted to
Army
kill it.
wanted it to stay illegal, which I think is wild, but the Army being Army.
Yeah. And if it hadn't been, if it hadn't been for the Navy, funny thing is in the future, if you get into ham radio far enough, you'll hear a program called Mars, and Mars is a military auxiliary radio service, and you can actually get connected and use certain frequencies, and that's where the Mars mod verbiage comes from. You can use frequencies that are not legally allowed by ham radio operators, and it's specifically designed to have operators that can do radio service stuff that may not be connected to the military. Also, for defense, say you got invaded, etc. It was more of a Cold War project, but the Navy had actually shut down their Mars. The Army said we're not shutting down, and now the Navy's bringing their Mars back because they think the satellites are all going to be shot down, which is kind of spooky.
I heard a couple things about that, but yeah, um, and that expands a little bit on what some of those modifications we were talking about earlier was. Um, but again, that's point of use for these radios is you want something that's small, lightweight. Um, Unfortunately, you're not going to get that you're not going to get a ton of power, lightweight, and easy to transport in the same package. So you do have to compensate, and like you said, you got to practice. And I won't go in line and say that I don't practice as much as I should. I try to get on nets where I can, but um, again, that's kind of where I was. I love this KX3. It's great, but you pick it up after hell a couple months of not using it, and you're like, oh
Yep.
well,
Yep.
this button and on that one, and for those who may not be totally tuned to that unit, if you ever look it up and just look up a Google image as a faceplate, each button does about 2 or 3 things. Or more, depending on what key presses and multiple key presses. And if it wasn't for that sheet, the oh shoot, I can't remember what those things were called. That little book was called. Yeah, the Nifty
Nifty.
Guide.
It's the Nifty
Man, that
manual.
thing is an absolute
Yep.
lifesaver. But the Nifty Guide on the frickin' KX3 is literally 2, 3 pages long. Looking at it right now, it's like 4. No, it's 4
Yep.
pages long, and great piece. I mean, you're talking some professional kit. And I know a lot of guys that go in part of the forums and stuff. They'll fix it too, real easy as long as they have the parts. But to pick this up and be ready to go, like you talked about before, or giving it to somebody, I could never give that KX3 to somebody. Never, ever.
Yeah. And then set up digital and
No, because I
everything else
barely
like
have
that.
figured that out.
The goal, yeah, and that's
Yeah,
a whole other can of worms. It's something that you have to experience and play with. Uh, I will say in the article, I have a cheat sheet for the 6100 that was done, I think, by somebody in the UK, or maybe it was, yeah, I think it is. It's wiki.oarc.uk. So some guy there create a cheat sheet so you don't have to go buy a nifty one. You can print it out, laminate it yourself.
those are really helpful for
So,
any radio you get. But
anyways,
cool, awesome.
yeah. I think Mando, you've got your G90 and you're setting that up for a car thing. I know we can set it up as a pack radio if you wanted to, but I don't I don't see that as a future for that
The
radio anymore.
G90 is going to be
Correct?
a base station because of the you have to have the external. The 6100 is going to be
Yeah.
the mobile because worst case scenario, I travel. My wife travels for work. I travel, every week. So does she. So it's like, okay, well, worst case scenario, the car's dead, the cell phones are dead, the power's out. I can at least hook batteries up to both of these. One has an internal. flip them both on. Okay, we're going to we're going through our pace plan. This is what we're going to do. Boom, and that we can at
Yep.
least try to make contact because it's not that far, so should have a opportunity to at least try. And
Yep.
then you have contingency plans in place that follow, pace plans layered into each other based on what's going on. So,
Hmm.
so that's
Yeah.
the idea is one stays here because it's not doesn't have the radio in it. So, bare minimum we can do very brief contact. Um, and the other one seems like it's just going to be easier to deal with. If I put a laminated sheet, here's your instructions because she's not versed in this stuff. Uh, you can
Yeah.
get through it. So the nifty thing I hadn't heard of before, so I'll definitely make sure to check that stuff out.
You won't need that
Well,
one
I'm
for
just saying.
that. The G90 is
Yeah.
pretty simple radio too. Yeah. Yeah, and they do cost money. Don't get me wrong. And the one thing I don't like about Nifty is they cost so much money for a laminated piece of paper. But somebody did the work to figure this out and say this is the bare minimum you need for radio. So I do buy them, and I buy them for handhelds. Yaesu's god awful. The Yaesu radio is just like what he was saying with the KX3. One button does 10 things.
Yep.
It's a pain in the ass. It's too complicated, and that's another reason why the 6100s are so simple, especially with the screens now. Okay, the G90 had this kind of feature, but now you can go in here and you can go to any screen, and it's picture clear. It says radio settings 1, radio settings 2, display settings, system settings, memory edit. Boom. You can get into
Yep.
most of the radio. There's a couple buttons over there that you kind of need to know what that means, but if you run a radio for a little bit, you'll figure it out. So,
Well, not to keep
but
tooting this horn, but good handheld reference guide, Gorilla's Guide to the Battlefield Radio. So if you guys haven't gotten in on that, make sure
yeah,
you do. And
and
then
you need that radio.
yep,
You need that manual because you're gonna need your pace plans. You need to know how to build an
yep.
antenna. The biggest stupid failing, and this is something a historian taught in his class. For you guys who are radio nuts, Wyoming Tactical does an HF course. I have not taken his course. He's a good guy. He knows Scout. They're good
Wyoming
friends,
Survival.
and I've heard nothing. Yeah,
Yep.
Wyoming Survival. Sorry, not Wyoming Tactical. And the guy teaches a great class. I eventually will go to one of his classes. Historian did his first class in North Carolina. That guy taught me so much, my brain hurt. He also taught about how to pack your radio away for EMPs. And I don't know how deep Wyoming Survival goes, but I've watched his stuff on X, and he is phenomenally smart about this stuff. Go talk to him. But the biggest thing is and Mando might be able to attest to this. It's not always the firearm components that are the major important thing. It's the barrel that gets your accuracy. Yeah, everything else has got to work properly and it's got to be fitted, and your optics have to match that. But the barrel quality is probably the most important thing on a gun. Am I correct?
It depends, and it's sometimes subjective, but that's something for hopefully when we do the common off the shelf rifle one, we can talk about that.
Yeah, but but you'd say a good barrel is a key component to
It's
most of this,
it's
correct?
as
For
far
most of it.
as so if we're just talking about rifles, just real quick,
Yeah.
it's the consumable part. It's a lot of people forget about that.
Okay.
So the consumable part, if you spend a little bit more money on the consumable part, like good ammo, good barrels, they're
Yeah.
going to cause you to do better generally, but also very
More accurate over
specifically.
time.
So if you're
Yeah.
talking about, hey, I want to be able to talk to, I don't know, South Africa, well, you might have to spend a little bit more money to get something a little bit better quality. That's kind of the same thing we're talking about.
Uh, Yeah, and this builds into the radios. The radio is important, and think of that as your receiver to your rifle. But your antenna
There
is
you go.
your important thing. That's where all the magic happens. And Chameleon antennas makes great antennas, but they charge you out the nostril for an antenna. And a couple other companies do a good job. If you don't really want to build an antenna, Soda Beams is expensive for what it is, but it's not too expensive, and it's a nice packable antenna. So I'll recommend that. But get the Baofeng guide, the Baofeng
Rose Guide.
guide to the Gorilla's Guide to the Baofeng. Holy crap! That will teach you how to make
Well,
these antennas. The
you
base
can
antenna.
go to what's the website? Part picker. What is it? The part picker one for all the radio parts. You can go online and get
Uh,
the connecting parts you need are on Amazon, and then you can go to Home Depot and buy a
yeah.
couple of coil wire of electrical wire or Menards or whatever,
Any
and
wire
you
will
can make
work.
them
Yeah,
yourself.
basically
And
any
when you
wire will work.
have that personal capability, that internal skill that somebody can't take away from you, like, oh my gosh, if I had to strip the wire out of the walls in a house that's blown up or burnt down or whatever, I could build a antenna. So, like that MacGyver ability to take the bare minimum pieces and parts and make it work. It's pretty awesome to have that feeling. So that
Yeah, one of my buddies was over in Iraq during the Second War, and his RTO got the antenna shot right off his radio, pack radio. Didn't kill the radio. He literally pulled wire off the side of the building and made an antenna to communicate. So it's a skill that you should know if you get into
well,
radios,
and
but
and
it's
when
not
we
that big
talk
of a
about
deal.
like partisan operations or Gorilla's Guide and
Yep.
that type of thing, I mean, if you can't make contact with your teams, with your base, with adjacent units, whatever is going on, if you actually have to do
Can't
something,
send intelligence.
it's just as critical because you could die just as easily as a jammed rifle or a missed shot or whatever. In fact, probably a lot of that's more important because there's so much more. It's one of the things that Scout talks about in his classes is there's
Yep.
so much buildup to go run an op that only lasts for a little while. And when we get into the competition
Yep.
stuff, that I've done and we've done, it's the same thing. There's like all this like build up and practice and waiting around, and then you go shoot a 17-second match or less, a
Yep.
10-second match, and you're like, I was out here for 8 hours and I shot for a minute and a half today. So it's kind of the same thing. Like you're gonna make that 1 minute contact, but all the stuff leading
Totally.
up to that is important. So
Yeah, and the worst thing is on the radio, you want the shortest
right.
contact possible, but it takes you setting up. And this is something a historian told us: make a checklist on what you need to bring with your radio. I am notorious for not doing that. Pack that with your radio. Check it before you leave, and make sure you have everything when you come back, because you don't want to leave evidence that you are out at a certain spot. Historian said, don't transmit on the same frequency, don't transmit in the same spot, and don't use the same transmission technique, whether that is voice, uh, Morse code,
And
RTTY, etc.
Yeah.
Change that up
and
as much as
obviously what
possible.
we're talking about here is for entertainment and educational purposes only, and we're only talking about hypotheticals and military simulation or milsim applications. So nothing illegal or unlawful.
No,
Just a quick
none of that.
disclaimer.
So,
It's just really good to make sure that you kind of know. Make sure you have your stuff with you, because God knows I've done the same thing. You get all the way
Yeah.
out there and
yeah,
you forget your antenna, or you forget the pole that your antenna is supposed to be up on, or
Mhm.
your throwing rope.
yeah,
That helps you get your most. To be honest, nobody really forgets the radio, but you forget one cable. You forget,
no,
yeah, you forget,
everything else.
to
Yep.
charge the battery or something like that, where um, something kind of stupid that
And I'm notorious for
it's.
that.
Well, I mean, when
Notorious
you
for
think
that.
about it, you have, just in conventional, if you're just trying to transmit voice, you're just trying to talk on the radio, you got what? You
Yep.
got the radio, you got the cable that goes to the antenna, you have the antenna itself, you have the way that you get the antenna into the tree or up in the air, so that'll be a pole or a throw bag, then you also probably have an external battery, which also has a cable. So I mean, and that's yeah,
Then you have a
plus your
mic.
mic.
Well,
And,
that's
yeah. And I forgot the cable. I forgot the power cable one time. Literally had the battery and everything else. And this is a side note on this. Anderson power poles are worth their weight in gold. Go learn about them and set up your radio with
that's
those. And that way, everything you charge it, universal power pole,
why I
Anderson
wanted to
power
buy
pole.
this box, because it's like if everything fits in the box and everything has a slot that it's supposed to fit into, and if there's a
Oh yeah.
slot that's
Yep.
empty, I open the box and go, oh, where's that? Where's my power cord? Where's my what loop in my wire antenna? Oh, okay, I gotta go get it. whatever. So, and then a list, obviously, that fits. So, yeah, lists are important.
Yeah,
That's why we
unfortunately,
make
that's a
packing lists.
All
process.
right, so
But yeah,
I'm going to wrap this up, and how we're going to wrap this up is I'm going to give my final words on this thing and say, would I buy it again? Because I already own it. And I'm going to ask you guys the same thing. Overall, 6100, would I buy it again? Yes. If I had the option to get the 6200 and had the money, I'd probably go for that one. And especially in about a year, it'll probably be worth it. But this is definitely a radio that I'm going to not only recommend to people, I'm going to probably keep this one around, and it may be a radio that I end up buying for somebody for a Christmas present or something like that if I have the coins. I think it's a phenomenal radio for the cost. So, Rabbit, you don't own this, so what do you think?
well, definitely coming into the conversation, I know I was already interested in the 6000 or the Xiegu 61 and the 62. I can't say that I can really make a definitive on the two of them. I'm kind of leaning towards 62 just because to do the aviation stuff, I would like to
Makes
listen
sense.
in. Obviously that's all listening.
Yep.
There's no law about not, listening to that stuff, but definitely I think some of those, like you talked about the firmware changes, the usability. Um, I'm cool with the power because it's similar to the units that I'm working now. Um, but to have a unit that actually has a waterfall on it, has as many capabilities as it does, yeah, I definitely think my next purchase, at least for communication equipment, is going to be one of these. Um, Maybe the 62.
Yep.
That will definitely be money dependent on whether it's 61.
I wish I had the money for a 6200 at the time I wrote
Yeah,
in the article. I'm like, I would have gotten that, but I was buying thermals and this radio, and I was like, budget.
yeah. I
So
think I would
I
like
totally
to
get that. Um,
at least, well, one, I've played with them before and liked it very much and picked it up very quickly, which that I thought was awesome. Was I didn't need a damn degree in how to work this thing. I can pick it up and with some general knowledge, some general like I've practiced with radios before. Um, so I think yeah, I think hopefully in the next year or so that'll be my next purchase. Will be one of these radios at least.
Mando, it's your turn to wrap us up, sir.
So I would definitely buy the 6100 again. It's just the portability, the ease that even just turning it on and messing with the controls, the internal battery, all that stuff. I really like that. I like it better than the G90. Let me put it that way. Um,
Yeah.
as would I get the 6200? I think personally, like I would not, just because the price difference is going to put me. I'd rather put that money in like the next step up. If they're similar capabilities, if they were a huge difference in capabilities for a couple $100, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to go for it. But I think I'm going to step to the next, a really serious ham style, what the sad hams are using, whatever. um,
Well, maybe get something with 100 watts so you have a
yeah,
true
there
base
you go.
station if you need it too, and that's
Yeah.
I can understand that. I
Join
know
the
I know
dark
Rabbit
side.
is more into
Hmm.
the I know Rabbit's more into to listening to aviation and paying attention to the skies than I am, and that's part of the reason why I didn't care. I was like, I can see things on my tiny SA Ultra, but he knows what's going on with aircraft a lot more, so it makes total sense.
Yep. So that's all I got.
All right, guys. Well, we will come back with some other. Either we're going to do a book, or we're going to do another object, or we're going to talk about a chapter out of somebody's book like Joe Dolio's, etc. So hopefully we keep doing this when we've got time, and you guys have a great time.
Appreciate
Good
it.
night.